Hello YouTube, hello fans, this is Daniel, back again for another video, this time focusing on the placement Moon in Aquarius. So what happens when the Moon transits through the constellation Aquarius, what energy is projected, how does the Moon's influence change as it goes through the kind of distant sign of Aquarius? Well, it is interesting. In essence, this placement I often think of as being somebody who is tethered to a distant galaxy. Someone who's kind of there, but they're not really there. They tend to be people who live ahead of their time. They tend to be people who their mind always wanders. Their spirit is free, and so they have a difficult time grounding themselves to the present course, to mundane tasks, to day-to-day life. These things don't really appeal to them as much as they would to let's say somebody with the moon in Virgo or something like that. In a general sense, these people are in essence considered to be eccentric, a little bit weird. They tend to be loners. They tend to be people that they're okay with being alone. They don't need a huge entourage of people. Their mind, is constantly going. All the time. They're constantly thinking. They're constantly contemplating. And so for them, to be left alone with their thoughts, really isn't that bad a thing. They need that kind of time. They need that distance, from others in order to gather themselves, in a sense. And really, this sense of the loner mentality, it really doesn't become apparent if you know someone with this placement until you get to know them. Sorry. In a group situation, they're going to seem very approachable. They're going to seem very willing to talk, very willing to exchange ideas, very willing to conversate. But as the crowd dies down, as things become more and more personal, we move more into, I'll call it a Leo interaction. We move more to that intimate one-on-one. And this is where, they become uncomfortable. This is where you start feeling that distance, that pullback, that sense that I have to set boundaries for myself, and I have to contain my own person and make sure that I am solidly a standalone individual and not merged with anybody else. Many of them have an unconventional sort of ability to project themselves out far beyond the present time. They tend to dress differently, they tend to act differently. The types of occupations that they're interested in tend to be different, tend to be a little bit off the beaten path. And so, they really aren't looking to lead much of a conventional life. They think about the conventional life, the conventional way of doing things, and for them, it's a bit boring. It's a bit, it's tried and true, but, for the Aquarius, especially the Aquarius moon, living the tried and true life isn't much excitement at all. So, they tend to take on a very scientific viewpoint about life and about everything, really. They like to test theories, they like to, form hypotheses, and they like to experiment. This is a highly experimental kind of sign where, the individual is going to be somebody who, looks at a given situation, especially as it relates to the moon. So as it relates to their feelings, as it relates to their inner self, as it relates to who they are, and really experiment with that. So they're going to think about themselves, they're going to, really, put themselves out there in situations that other signs might not, and this is in order to gain that information, in order to gain that insight, just as a scientist would out in the field. The scientist, puts himself in, sometimes, kind of difficult, tight and even hostile situations in order to collect data, in order to find out facts, in order to study and observe and finally come to a conclusion that is going to allow him to make a determination about something or somebody. And the moon in Aquarius does exactly this. You know, the moon in Aquarius really, you know, wants to discover things on their own. You know, they would rather, excuse me, they would rather do things a million times and fail, completely fail. And rather than being told the correct way to do things a single time. And this again goes back to, you know, the sense that, you know, Aquarius is a little bit of a rebel. Aquarius is a little bit of a trailblazer. You know, they like to, you know, set their own path, and simply because they like to discover. You know, they like to figure things out for themselves, and you know, they much prefer it that way, because for them, self-discovery, especially, you know, with the moon placement in Aquarius, is going to be paramount to their spiritual development as well as to their emotional and intellectual development. So, you know, if you have this placement, you know, really I would encourage you, you know, to be a self-discover, you know, to not really rely on the advice of others, not because they're going to give you bad advice, but because you're not really going to internalize that advice. You're not really going to take it home with you, you know, as would befit the moon. You're going to really take it, you know, with a grain of salt, and then, you know, until you observe it, until it becomes something within your mental repertoire, you know, you're really going to not really take it in. And so for you, experience really is the best teacher. You know, this placement is known for, and indeed does have, at least for most people, unless it's aspected differently, or it's in, you know, like let's say, you know, the 4th house, or, you know, the 9th house, or something like that. It is a placement that is considered to be emotionally detached. You know, these people hold themselves in reserve, and, you know, may appear, you know, at times to be remote. They may appear to be people who, you know, are, you know, a little bit withheld. You know what I mean? They're not really wholly with, you know, any one individual. They tend to be set alone, you know, in their own minds. And so, you know, this is sort of them retaining that sense of independence that, you know, Aquarius really values so greatly. You know what I mean? The concepts of independence and of freedom, these things are like peanut butter and jelly for the Aquarius. They simply go together. You know, they are united as one. You know, there is nothing that an Aquarian values more than his or her own individual freedom or independence. And they will maintain this. You know, I mean, with a moon in Aquarius, you know, this sign is, you know, the root of them. This is who they are. And so, you know, they will strive to maintain this independence. So, you know, I mean, if, you know, you're somebody who, you know, you have a friend with this placement, you know, you are someone with this placement, so you know what I'm talking about. Or, you know, you have, you know, a significant other with this placement. You know, this person, you know, and, you know, it's not to say that they don't love you, they don't care about you. Their, you know, their emotional distance, you know, comes from just simply a desire to hold themselves in reserve. And it's simply part of the Aquarian psyche, you know, to maintain that sense of self, that sense of independence. People with an Aquarian ascendant will display these tendencies as well. You know, and they tend to be people who, you know, in a crisis situation, you know, they maintain that level head. You know what I mean? They're able to see things from the big picture. And so, you know, much like the scientists, you know, who when observing things, where there's chaos, where there's, you know, a little bit of, you know, uncertainty, you know, this is a sign that really, you know, doesn't necessarily jump into things. You know, they don't necessarily, you know, cling to, you know, the hero mentality. They're more or less the kind of person that's going to stand back and watch and observe. And then, you know, I mean, you know, they'll get involved as needed, but truly, you know, it's a sign that loves generalities, that loves to look at the big picture, and that, you know, is really an observer, you know, quite the observer among the 12 zodiac signs. And so because of this, you know, I mean, they're often seen, you know, as being somebody, you know, who, you know, you might go into a coffee shop, and, you know, you might see a guy, you know, sitting by himself, you know, just kind of, you know, drinking some coffee, maybe, you know, observing people. You know, this is classic moon in Aquarius behavior. You know, this is, you know, once again, a sign that, you know, and a placement that does not mind being alone, that does not mind idle time, on their own. And so they're really just looking to contemplate. They're really just looking to, be one with themselves, and to, have that sense of self, always maintained. I mean, if you're in a situation where, there's a group of people, and, there's somebody with this placement among you, they're going to be the type to say, you know what, I'm going to go off by myself. I'm going to go do this. You guys go on ahead. I mean, and they're okay with that. I mean, and this is, off-putting to some people. This is seen as, a little bit rude to some people. But once again, it's just simply the desire to maintain independence and the sense of self, the sense of freedom. However, on a more general scale, I mean, this is a placement that has always been associated with humanitarian efforts, people who are orientated towards, group thinking, towards, thinking about the larger environment as it concerns people. I mean, if you know anything about, famous people in history, who fall under the sign of Aquarius, you know that Aquarians have played a major role, particularly in the United States, of, assisting people in maintaining freedom, assisting people in getting freedom, and really going to great lengths, to make things happen, to make the impossible happen, and to change the system. The things like the status quo, the way things are, acceptance of, the current boundaries, as it relates to the environment, and as it relates to, society in general, not on an intimate level, but on a societal level. This is a sign that's not going to accept that. This is a sign that even to, the detriment of their own well-being, will find themselves many times in a in a position where they're going to be looking to engage different groups to orientate them towards some kind of action, for the good of for the good of humanity, as it were. This is a sign that really finds itself in a position to do that time and time again throughout history. I mean, I cannot say it enough. And all you have to do, really is look at some of the famous people, with this as a sun or moon placement. And really, it just denotes the fact time and time again about this sign. So, I mean, it's a very powerful placement. It can be incredibly powerful and life-changing for, for society in general. And this is a sign that's, once again, looking to be the trailblazer, looking to be the trendsetter, looking to, be something of a chaos agent. Of course, because of course, Aquarius relates back to, not only Saturn, but Uranus as well. And, Uranus, I mean, I'll get into a whole thing about planets later on where, I mean, just a little bit about Uranus, where, Uranus is, his persona is freedom. It is chaos. It is the ability to be independent, to the nth degree. Uranus is really the true chaos agent in the universe. And, he looks to spread discord, but he looks to do it in a way where, people are removed from bondage. People are removed from their sense of indentured servitude. And, Aquarius, feeds right into that energy, as it comes through Uranus. But that will be more on that later. So, getting back to the sense that Aquarians can come up with great ideas, there is a need, however, for them to consort with others and to really fine-tune ideas, because Aquarians tend to think on the grand scale. They tend to think, big. And so, they really need somebody there to fine-tune things, to get things down to a point, and to put things into action. Cardinal signs are good at this, but, the moon in Aquarius, it thinks big, it thinks large, and, it looks, beyond whatever boundaries it's presented with. In the individual's life, in the mundane world, this is a placement that really, it cannot really grasp, I mean, of course it can grasp the need for, but it really can't wrap its head around, the importance of mundane tasks. People with this placement, they're going to be people, who, You know, they're late on their car payments. They're late on their credit card payments. Shoot, I didn't pay that, you know, car bill for the past 2 months, and you know, there's the repo man outside. You know, where's my mind? You know, I mean, they're going to be looking at things, you know, once again from the big picture. You know, so and from a point of excitement as well. You know, so I mean, they're not going to be looking at, you know, okay, I'm going to go to the doctor on this date. I'm going to pay this bill on this date. I'm going to, you know, go to the dentist on this date. You know, that things like that. I mean, they're lucky if they remember those things at all. You know, what is important to them are the exciting things in life. You know, are the things that really tell them they're alive. And so, you know, bungee jumping, yeah, got that marked down. You know, uh, race car driving, yeah, got that marked down too. You know, and those things they'll remember, you know, because those are the things that, you know, they're looking forward to. And, you know, with the moon in Aquarius, you're looking forward. You're looking at the future. You're looking at things from a positive future presentation, as it was taught to me. And so what that means is that they're really tethered to the future, and they're tethered to good things in the future. So, you know, these people tend to be very optimistic. These people tend to be very, you know, glass half full as opposed to glass half empty. And so, you know, they're really orientated towards, you know, positive, you know, enlightening, good things happening, you know, and you know, really the mundane things, you know, are they're really not on their list. You know, they're really just not thinking about those kinds of things. You know, this placement, you know, I mean, as I've said, you know, in other videos, you know, the moon is indelibly tied to the fourth house. It's indelibly tied to the mother. It's indelibly tied to the sign of Cancer. You know, and so as it relates to the sign of Aquarius, the moon itself has a little bit of a tough time. You know, it's not quite as detrimental as, you know, some of these other signs, you know, that I have done and will do in the future. You know, Scorpio, Capricorn, Virgo. You know, these are signs where the moon really struggles, for various reasons. But in the sign of Aquarius, you know, it's a little bit of an absent relationship. You know, I mean, the moon wants to hug, the moon wants to cuddle, the moon wants to, you know, get in close and, you know, be affectionate. And Aquarians don't really want to do any of that. Aquarians would much rather, you know, I'm here, you're there, and you know, let's exchange some ideas, and let's, you know, let's cuddle the mind. You know, I mean, that's really where the Aquarian, you know, sense of affection comes in. Is, you know, the art of conversation, the art of exchanging ideas. You know, is powerful, and many times romantic for the moon in Aquarius. You know, this is a big turn on for somebody with, you know, this kind of placement. So if you're dating somebody with this placement, you know, take that information to heart. You know, I mean, figure out what they like, and you know, present this information, you know, in a way that, you know, makes sense, and in a way that they feel like, oh, you know, this person, you know, I didn't know they were interested in this. You know, I mean, this is stimulating to me now. You know, and so this is going to be a big plus. You know, if you are in that kind of situation. So just throwing that out there. So as it relates to the fourth house, you know, via the moon, these people tended to be, you know, as children and growing up, you know, people who were never really, you know, quite connected to the family. You know, I mean, they were kind of the kid that, you know, there'd be a family gathering, you know, a family reunion, Christmas party, you know, what have you. And, you know, I mean, barring other placements, you know, because as I said, you know, you can have the moon in Aquarius, and you can have other things that either take or enhance, you know, away from this position. So I have to put out that disclaimer. But purely from a moon in Aquarius standpoint, you know, they were sort of that kid that was, you know, on his Game Boy, you know, or playing his, you know, some kind of electronic device, because, you know, Aquarians tend to love electronics, computers, things of that nature. And so, you know, he or she was just kind of there, you know, just doing their thing, not really, you know, participating, not really, you know, socializing in that group. And, you know, you might ask yourself, wait a second, you said that Aquarians are all about, you know, the group environment. And that's true. However, there's a big caveat there. And the caveat is that we're talking about family in this scenario. When I say that Aquarians gravitate towards the group environment, the group mentality, where that's where they're engaged, what I am meaning to say is that I'm talking about a group of friends. I'm talking about a group of people who they trust, who they confide in, who their ideas are similar, and getting back to, like I said, find ideas for, this person, and, they're going to meld right in with you, if you have that common, conversational interest. But so friends really become family for this placement. Many times over, you will see people with this placement who, they're not really close to their biological family. In the case of Moon in Aquarius, the mother, there may have been, a cordial yet distant relationship. There may have been, a boundary, that the child or the mother, depending upon aspects and other influence, placed on the relationship. She may not have been necessarily bad or good, but just kind of indifferent, just kind of existing in the child's life. And so, the child, learned to really to grow on their own. And for a Moon in Aquarius, this really isn't a problem. This is much what they prefer, actually. But getting back to the group environment, what I'm meaning to say, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, was that, for them, really friends, and really you can think of the 11th house, the house of friends. This sign loves groups of friends, groups of people with like-minded ideas. And being the leaders of these groups is especially enhancing. So, if you have excelled Aquarian aspects elsewhere in the chart, you're going to find yourself, really gravitating towards, these groups where you can, present your ideas, and, everyone is essentially feeling the same way. And, it's all just, just wonderful harmony. So, these are the kinds of environments where, they're not going to be on the computer, they're not going to be on the Game Boy, they're going to be talking. They're going to be, really conversating and really just having, just a great time. And so, really, with this placement, as it relates to environments, you can be somebody, who is, a professional. You can be somebody who is, a white-collar worker, let's say, and, but you may have anarchistic tendencies. You may have in the back of your mind, feelings like, things, the status quo, it's not always right. It needs to get broken down, or you may have, extreme political ideas. And so, people who are on these fringes exteriorly, because if you're somebody, you got a Moon in Aquarius, you have, let's say, a Virgo ascendant, the face of you is going to be very conventional. It's going to be very neat, organized. And in the mind, though, in the rear, you're going to be somebody, who likes a little bit of chaos, who likes a little bit of anarchy, who, is maybe themselves, a chaos agent all their own. And so, when you find these people on the fringes who are clearly on the fringes, blue mohawks, leather, people riding motorcycles, all that kind of stuff. I mean, you're going to find yourself comfortable with that, whereas other people, wearing a three-piece suit aren't going to be comfortable with those kinds of people. So I mean, if you are one of those kind of people, this is probably a good indication why. Lastly, because I know I'm running long, with this placement in areas of romance or in areas of some, how do they say, sentimental concern. This is a little bit difficult for you in the traditional sense. This is going to be something that you are going to struggle with, not a whole lot, but you're going to find yourself really, desiring somebody, who is themselves self-sufficient, who doesn't need you every moment of the day, because truly this is a burdensome task for Aquarius and the Moon in Aquarius in particular. So there's going to be a desire to find somebody who is themselves probably a Moon in Aquarius, or a Moon in another sign that is independent, that is self-aware, and that really doesn't need a whole lot from a whole lot of people. Really can take care of themselves. This is attractive to you, because you are this kind of person. And really, I mean, there are many ways to gauge compatibility in the zodiac. Astrologers will tell you different things. For me, however, compatibility with the moon sign, is really the tell all. Because the moon sign is sort of the sign you take home with you. When you're at home with somebody, or when you're in an intimate situation with somebody, this is what's going to come out. This is what is going to make itself apparent. So, you can have all this exterior stuff that's really great. I mean, you guys can be compatible, on the Venusian level. You can be compatible on the mercurial level. But when you're sitting alone or not alone, when you're sitting on a park bench with somebody, and all of a sudden they're like whipping out their cell phone, and you're somebody with a moon in Cancer, or you're somebody with a moon in Pisces, and you're like, hey, I mean, give me some love. They're going to be like, well, let me check my email first. So it's better to be somebody like that and understand those tendencies than to not be somebody like that and really find out at the very end. So, once again, moon signs are powerful. They're incredibly powerful. And in the sign of Aquarius, I mean, they're different, in a good way. Really, I mean, these people, once again, like I said, they're never really able to merge fully with somebody. They're always looking for, that sense of adventure, that sense of freedom. And so for them, you can kind of think of it as like, romantic friendships, are perfect for them. If you've ever watched the show Friends on TV, the American show for those of you watching overseas, watch the show Friends, and you'll see really just this very Aquarian dynamic, where, you have a group of people, who they date sometimes, sometimes they get intimate. If things don't work out, they go back to being friends. And sometimes this may be like a revolving door, and they may switch off, I mean, and it gets to be a little bit of a community effort. Aquarian is, part of, the sign that rules community, of course. And this is true about relationships as well. So you can think of, their desire really is for a romantic friendship. Somebody who they can bounce ideas off, somebody who shares a lot of their values, a lot of their feelings, and, someone who, they can turn away from, when needed, and have that alone time, have that time for contemplation, and then come back and then, express those ideas again. This is a beautiful thing for them. They're really, I mean, they really don't do too well in relationships that are constant, that are smothering, that are just all enveloping. This is not something that they're going to last in. You're going to squeeze the life out of them, as it were. Some signs will do that. Some other moon signs. Ultimately, though, they're a sign that takes the road less traveled. They're a sign that, particularly in the moon, they're always out there. They're always wandering. And I mean, as it relates to the moon, with this placement, you're going to be somebody you're on a lifelong journey. And I mean, you're going to meet certain people. And really the key for this placement is to hang on in some way to those people who have meant something to you throughout this journey, and to, at the very end of the day, collect them, know them, and understand them, and really build that community of like-minded people, over time. Don't let go of people. This tends to be a problem for Aquarius. So this has been my analysis of the placement Moon in Aquarius. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them in the comments below, or you can email me directly, and I would be very happy to answer in either case. Thank you, and have a great day.